Hey Tribe, welcome back to the Primal Path Podcast. This week we have Joe Rapisarda. He's going to be talking about the benefits of mushrooms. He owns a mushrooms farm up in Middletown called Raps Caps. He's going to be talking about Wim Hof breathing techniques, why it's important to take 30 deep breaths every single day to help reduce your anxiety and increase your energy. And then we're going to talk about the integration of natural remedies of movement, mushrooms, and breathing into your lifestyle so you can find a more holistic way in health and fitness. Enjoy the podcast. Can understand who you are, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so Joe Rapisarda, born and raised here in Connecticut, CT, one of the young ones that stayed. I joke because all my friends moved away after high school, but they all came back during COVID, which is the joke. But yeah, so I was born in New Britain, Connecticut. Went to New Britain schools.
New Britain, a little rough, huh?
The hardware city of CT. A lot of history in Connecticut. I love history. So, New Britain history is big industrial history, Fafner's, Stanley Tools, so many large businesses that have made such an impact around the world started in New Britain, specifically, around World War II era and stuff like that. So
I didn't even know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. They say that New Britain was one of the cities on a list in Germany if they were ever going to come into the East Coast at all, because we made all the ball bearings for military equipment. You had Colt that was making weapons and stuff. So right. It was a really one of the most important manufacturing hubs of the U.S. at that time for military industrial and stuff like that. So super cool. Now I live in Middletown, so I moved 15 minutes down the highway. Just as historical as New Britain, if not, it is more historical technically, because Middletown, I've learned, is the first point of trade that organized as the ships were coming up the Connecticut River and the settlers were experiencing the Connecticut River for the first time. And right over there by the Aragonese Bridge, where there's a sharp turn in the river, sailboats couldn't go past that, so they just parked right there, right where the old canoe club is, over on the highway Park, in downtown Middletown, Harbor Park. And that is the first point of settlement that had started within the state, one of the first. So Main Street Middletown has always been like a gastro hub and a spot to be, not just because it's a great location for a great city front, but because historically that's where the majority of people that resided in Connecticut coming from Europe had settled and started to live. So really cool, really just as historical, just as much manufacturing, but that's where I'm living now. But yeah, so again, Connecticut kid, born and raised in New Britain, went to New Britain High School, and I joined the Army out of high school at 19. So I was one of those kids where like my parents had to sign the dotted line for me. And originally, my parents...
The DEP? Did you get the... I was in that delayed entry program. Yeah, I was in that too.
Yeah. And my parents originally weren't going to let me join the infantry. And that was the whole thing. Is they were like, okay, we'll sign for you, but you can't do the infantry. And I was like, okay, fine. And then I had a dog handling contract as an MP. So I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. At the time, my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, her cousin was in the Army as a dog handler, and he had just gotten back from Iraq, so I saw a lot of his photos and stuff, so I was kind of pumped up about it. And I was up at MEPS and ready to sign, and then they hit me with the whole, you're too young to have this, we don't know how we missed this, but you can be whatever, a truck driver, an MOS, these other MOSs. And I was like, oh, hell no. So I left the office. I called my parents from like the bathroom, and I was like, I'm coming home and I'm joining the infantry, and that's what I want to do. So I did. I joined the Connecticut Guard at the time. For me, the Guard was a good median. I wanted to like get some schooling done, but I didn't. I didn't want to be full-time Army, because I had friends that were active duty Marine Corps, Army, that were older than me. So I was kind of listening to them through that knowledge, and went away, did basic training, came home in 2010. At that time, the unit that I was with the 102nd, who you'll probably meet people in your gym that are in the 102nd or at least in there. Also a historical military unit, one of the original for the Guard and the Minutemen, and I know I'm gonna get looks because
I love it,
because I'm a nasty girl too for the active duty guys. Yeah. But I had the opportunity to come back. My unit was deployed, and at the time I had just come done with high school. I didn't apply for any colleges or anything, so I went to Tunxus for a year, and then I was getting FOMO with the Connecticut guys that were deployed, and I found out that there was a unit in Rhode Island, an airborne infantry unit that was going over, and I decided to volunteer for them and went over to Rhode Island, suited up with those guys, trained for about a year, and then we went over to Afghanistan in 2012. So I was there from 2012, spring, February, until fall time around November, and came home in November. And my story picked up. That's kind of where most of my military experience was. So after my deployment, I stayed in the Rhode Island Guard for another 2 years, and then got out in 2016. I was back in Connecticut at that time, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And naturally, I said, okay, I want to get into business. That makes sense. Okay, yeah, finance makes sense. It's a universal thing. At that time, I was already interested in different entrepreneurial projects and stuff like that. So I went to Central.
What started that? Like, why you just were a person who's like, I just want to work for myself. I want to.
Yeah,
because it's always interesting. I always say is like people are like, why would you want to start your own business? Where does that drive from? Why, and I'm always curious on hearing other people's idea. Well, like, why did you go that entrepreneurial route? Was it the fact that you were so systematic and disciplined in the military, and like you had so many skills and knowledge that you're like, forget this, I want to do this on my own? Or was there always a drive to be a successful business person, even before the military?
I think it was probably the military.
Yeah, that's what happened to me too, man. I was like, I'm tired of taking orders, man.
Dude, there's how it is. Like, you do a certain amount of days out in the field, and you're getting rained on, and you're out there in the cold and the snow, and it's a
dumb mission.
You're in the suck, yeah. And I just remember thinking, like, when I get home, I just want to do the job that's gonna put me in an office with air conditioning and heat, and just make money and do all this stuff. And then that was when I thought, when I first came home, that's what drove me into the finance degree. As we'll talk about as we go down, that's also what brought me into the Bitcoin industry, away from traditional finance and away from the normal business lifestyle. Yeah. It's like one of those things where you got in for the money, and then you realize really quickly, like, it's not all about that, and the lifestyle is different. And I very quickly, I was still coming of age at this time. I was 22 years old, 21, 22, 23 years old, and found out that there was other interests that I had that I'm working on now, Wraps, Caps, and Tactical Pause, and the Wim Hof stuff, and the Bitcoin stuff. So I went back to Central. I got a finance degree at Central, and then
nice.
I started working.
Good timing too.
Yep, great timing. And then, of course, as a city kid from New Britain, I started working in manufacturing. So I started working for United Technologies Corporation, UTC. Specifically, I worked for Pratt & Whitney I was in one of those rotational programs. So I was able to work at 4 different jobs for the company. So that sent me to Pratt, Otis, back to UTC Corporate, and then I was in the Treasury Department at UTC as well. So I'd done a few jobs in manufacturing. From there, learned about Bitcoin in 2017. I also learned about mushrooms and the power of medicinal mushrooms, functional mushrooms. We'll get into some of that in more detail. And at that point in my life, it was kind of this this awakening to who I was, and the military, all the conditioning was kind of breaking away from the chains and norms, and refining myself. So while I was doing the MBA, I took the time to learn about those topics that I was interested in. Mushrooms, the power of mushrooms in the brain health, also the environmental health, Bitcoin, the 21st century finance, and kind of breaking the chains away from the inefficiencies we see in traditional money and finance and banking today. That leads to a lot of the corruption and the issues that we have around the world. And then the wellness stuff, the breath work. At that time, I was already starting to listen to some, philosophers and philosophy, and Terence McKenna, a lot of these people from the 60s and 70s, talking about consciousness and trying to answer these questions of who we are, why we're here, why are the experiences that I had, why did I have them? And that led me into, figuring out that what I wanted to do is those 3 things: Bitcoin, mushrooms, and the Wim Hof method. So in 2021, I started working for a Bitcoin exchange called Gemini. I'm on the institutional support team. So I help all of our customers buy and sell Bitcoin and store in their Bitcoin, both retail and institutional and corporate customers. I also own Wraps, Caps Mushroom Farm. So that's my mushroom farm that we have in Middletown, Connecticut. And we grow a variety of gourmet mushrooms such as lion's mane, shiitake, oyster mushrooms. And we've got an online shop that we sell for that. And I also became a certified Wim Hof method instructor, because the power of the breath, as we're going to talk about, it's amazing for me. I've realized that I was one of those kids growing up that had ADHD or ADD or whatever we label it as, kids that are with these things. But I became hyper focused into topics that I was interested in, and looking back now in life, I'm like, man, it makes sense why I've done everything I've done. The military, like, I was so obsessed with that, and I did it ROTC in high school all the way from freshman year, and just drilled into it. Once I learned about Bitcoin, I drilled into it, became super obsessed, hyper focused. The mushrooms were another one, and then the breath work was also another. Like, these topics that I think are so life changing and so profound, and are like proven to be true. They fascinate me so much that I get obsessed, and that's all I've done. So
yeah,
and now I'm here talking to you guys.
I think it's I think it's really cool that you talk about that obsession and that growth, because I always remember, like, since the day I can remember what I wanted to do in my life, there's two things I wanted to do. I want to be in the military, and I want to be a doctor. And still to this day, I fulfilled both those. Though I don't have a doctorate, my fascination with the human body, anatomy and physiology, and it has been ever since I've been a young child and stuff like that. So it's kind of like that thing that you get hyper focused on. At the same time, it's interesting to put all that attention into those couple things. But we got tons of stuff to talk about. But I kind of want to go in that progression in general. And I think, like, as much, I mean, we could talk about, if you want to start off with like a little bit more about Bitcoin, if you want to go down that route, we can. Touch base on that, but in general, I would love to talk about, in general, like the mushrooms, how you found and discovered mushrooms.
We'll keep our focus there.
Yeah, let's keep it there. But like, how have like specific mushrooms impacted your life? How did you find them? How did you discover them? And what are the good things of mushrooms?
Yeah. So how did I discover them? Why did I find them? I was a picky eater growing up, so I did not eat mushrooms. I knew nothing about mushrooms. The only thing I knew about mushrooms is that there's a mushroom on the ground. There it is in the grass. And I don't even know what kind of mushroom it is, but I just know it's a mushroom. That's all I knew. Even in the infantry, even in the field, like, you're like in the woods and you're like, oh, there's a mushroom. Yeah. But that's all you know is a mushroom, right? So in 2017, as I was going through, again, this journey of healing and reflection and everything, I was more and more invested into identifying if there's certain foods that I can introduce into my diet to improve my brain health.
Why were you worried about your brain health?
So up until that point, I had like 5 or 6 TBIs. So from before the military, just in high school, snowboarding, breaking my wrist, knocked unconscious, football, different types of head injuries, military service, get a bad truck accident kind of thing. And then even when I got out, there was a couple pretty bad head trauma that I'd had, where, I was knocked unconscious and stuff like that. So as by that era, the 2017 era, we started knowing more about CTE and brain health, and especially the VA and the military. So naturally, I'm like, okay, well, I got to like figure out how to like improve my own brain health now, because if I've had TBIs from the past, I want to be able to like help fix that in the future. Not that I have it, but we want to change the diet, or you want to improve your brain health. Which now everyone wants to be smarter, right? So, it doesn't matter if you have
smarter, fitter, sexier, healthier, faster,
So I'm Google searching, and one of the first topics, I'm Google searching foods that I can eat for brain health. And one of the first things that came up, one of the first articles, was a VA article from on lion's mane mushroom, and how lion's mane mushroom has nerve growth factor properties in it that help to prevent the myelin from around the brain cell from breaking down. And there was enough studies at this time where the data was looking like, wow, this is really cool. Like, lion's mane mushroom has compounds in it that are like almost like the protein for your brain cells. Like, when you work out at the gym, you tear muscle fiber, you get protein in your body to help
you're
retain
stretching the
that
myelin
growth.
of your muscle fibers.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was fascinated, and I was like, man, this is probably one of the few like things that the VA puts out that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I know, right?
They got like, man, all right, because this is interesting. So
your normal burn pit email, like, you're signing up for the burn pit.
I'm like, oh, it's not like doom and gloom for once. Like, it's not the worst thing ever. So I was fascinated that there was this mushroom lion's mane that you can eat for brain health, and that's what sparked my interest. And like I talked about with the going into that rabbit hole and becoming hyper focused, it's these weird little interesting facts that I'm like, that's really profound, because what are one of the leading causes of death and also of pain and suffering for families and individuals are brain degenerative disorders, dementia, Alzheimer's. Even PTSD goes into there. Parkinson's, like all of these brain degenerative disorders that they occur because the myelin breaks down and the brain cells break down. So all that neural activity and connection in the brain goes away as well.
So if people don't understand, like you have a myelin sheath pretty much, and your cells are running through that sheath. And once that sheath breaks down, then those cells can't travel, which then you're losing your pretty much neural connections is what you're losing. And when those neural connections are broken, then your function of your brain, it's like, tearing your Achilles tendon, where like you could still kind of walk on the foot, but like it's very inhibited, or you might lose it entirely. Like you're never going to be able to do a calf raise. You might not be able to get that function back. So that myelin sheath, for those who are listening who don't know, that's what that is. That's what he's talking about. The myelin, the sheath that allows the cells to travel through. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, this is good.
Clarify that.
It's for the audience too. Like, our conversations, because I know a lot of these topics you're already
nerd out
well versed in.
Let's go. Let's be all nerding out, man.
Andrew knows exactly what I'm talking. Back to the doctor and the citizen scientist, and we don't need anyways.
That's another podcast too.
That's a whole other topic. But it fascinated me, and then so that's what led me down that rabbit hole. And from 2017 until about 2019, I had done just straight book research. So buying textbooks. Watching all the YouTube videos and the content, doing my own research, and learning that like it doesn't just stop at brain health. Like mushrooms, the mycelium of the mushroom there's a lot of different things that it can help with. Brain health is one. I learned that mycelium also eat hydrocarbons, and all of the hydrocarbons from pollutants like oil and toxins and stuff. So the mushrooms can be used to remediate soil on land, like oil spilled fields, like all of this terrain that we have that's polluted. The mushrooms can take that polluted soil, eat it, consume it, and then turn it into fresh compost. So that fascinated me, and I learned that.
What a lot of people don't realize is like when you're seeing the growth of mushrooms on like dying trees or dead trees, those mushrooms are growing because they're eating the tree. They're turning it into something else, which is going to end up being soil and stuff like that, and letting it go or whatever it is. But mushrooms are so fascinating, especially on the cleanups of ocean spills, like you were talking about, like the benefit in the way that they are. They're like one of the oldest organisms or whatever. I don't even know the correct classification for that, but they've been around forever in the system that's underground. The underground mycelium that runs through, that's like entirely integrated. If you go down that rabbit hole, you're just mind blown at how the world works in a way that's well above our science level heads can even fathom at this level. But
so it's a good point, because the mycelium network of the mushroom, the mycelium grows in a network. So what it does is, what is the mycelium? The mycelium is the living organism of the mushroom. Okay. So the mushroom is to the mycelium as the tomato is to the tomato plant, right? So the tomato is the fruit body of the tomato plant, the living organism of the plant. The mushroom is the fruit body of the mycelium, the living organism. And so if you ever see a mushroom on the ground, and you can pull mushrooms out of the ground. So people always ask, like, can I touch them? Yeah, you can touch them. Just don't eat them unless you know what they are, but you can touch them. I encourage it. If you pull them out of the ground, or you dig in the soil next to the mushroom, you'll see what looks like white cobwebs that are all throughout the soil. It's one cell layer thick, so it's very thin, but you'll notice it looks like cobwebs. They're not cobwebs. That's the mycelium. That's the living organism. And this mycelium grows in a network effect where it consumes from its external environment. So it grows out, just like a web, like a network effect. And it grows right underneath the soil, out underneath the soil in a web form, and it'll keep growing like that as long as it has the proper nutrients in the food to consume. And like Andrew said, they're decomposers. So they're taking the trees and the brush and the hardwood, even organic matter, fruits, anything. Like if a human carcass was laying on the ground, it would consume the body, and it's breaking it down, and then it's taking all of that organic matter and redistributing it back underneath the soil into earth, and it's converting it into compostable soil, because the byproduct of the mycelium is soil compost. The mushroom is I'm like geeking out.
I'm gonna make you geek out a little bit harder. Have you ever thought about this is going on the conspiracy theory level stuff, but this is where our brains go. as your body dies, everyone wonders if you turn into something else in the afterlife. Yeah, I always thought of when your body dies and the mushrooms eat it, you just turn into another tree, and then all the trees in the world are all just people who have passed away before you.
Yeah.
It's
incredible.
It's crazy to think about, it
is correct. I think that's the right way to think about it, though.
If you think about it that way, then you start treating trees a little bit differently and having a little bit more respect for them, giving more respect to plant life. Not to say that they're people and we're going to start a new gender of plants, but
right.
But I'm saying it's just it's fascinating that you can go down so many rabbit holes with by looking at stuff in a different perspective on that.
And it's also called I've even heard of people, and I to myself believe in this, that the mycelium is like Gaia. It's Mother Earth herself.
Exactly.
It's amazing that we have this mushroom that's the fruit body of this organism that is all underneath the soil. That, to your point, if the human body was buried in the soil without any coffins or anything like this, the mycelium would break it down. It would live underneath the soil, that's the food that it had that's underneath the soil. And then when it fruits the mushroom out, we pick the mushroom, we eat the mushroom. It is Mother Earth. And there's something about that, though, that I think brings humans back to nature when it comes to mushrooms. And but yeah, just to tie around, though, the mushrooms that that fascinated me were lion's mane mushrooms for the brain health, turkey tail mushrooms for immune system health. And if anyone's suffering with cancer, I encourage you to do your own research. It's finally been put on most of the leading university websites and stuff, but turkey tail mushrooms helps with chemotherapy patients to help their immune systems from breaking down during chemo. So there's a much higher success rate because you're not immunocompromised.
What about oysters and shiitake? I know all of them have good benefits and stuff like that, but I know, like you said, lion's mane is going to be one of the big ones. But they all kind of do something similar but different, right?
Exactly, yeah. So a lot of these are called functional mushrooms, so they have different functions for them. Medicinal mushrooms as well. Some people call them medicinal. But the turkey tail is really good for immunosupport, immune system. If you're trying to keep your immune system healthy in the fall, stuff like this. The lion's mane is all about brain health. The cordyceps mushrooms, Cordyceps militaris, is typically what you find at powders for supplements and stuff. That one's really good for your oxygen uptake and your cardiovascular health. Reishi mushroom, which is also known as the mushroom of immortality, is really good for everything. It checks all the boxes, like DNA, health, lungs.
It's a cool looking mushroom too. Kind of like sunbursts that they get on the top of them. And
they're beautiful.
Pretty big
they're
too.
Beautiful.
Some of those suckers get pretty good. They're pretty common.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing too. Also around here, so I've seen you even on your social medias, going out foraging and stuff like that. Do you do a lot of that?
I do in the fall. We love it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm always sketched about that because I don't know your mushroom knowledge or anything like that. But I'm always I'm going to be that guy. Yeah, I can go chicken in the woods and head in the woods. But I'm I don't want that. That's not, those are just the Lay's potato chips of mushrooms.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
The woods. But some of the best ones. But yeah. But we do all the foraging, so we're very fortunate to live along the trail. I'm a student. I am not, I'm not an expert. I am very much a student. There's thousands and thousands of species of mushrooms. It's incredible. So even myself, I'm always learning more. But yeah, we forage here in Connecticut. If anyone wants to forage, it's even us though. We stick to the basics: the chicken of the woods, the maitakes, the giant puffballs, which are phenomenal. We made some giant puffball cutlets not too long ago, a few weeks ago.
The ones that you're pretty darn safe. It's like a 99.9% chance, almost 100% chance that is exactly what it is. Because there's nothing that looks like a puffball. You're just making sure that it's still white on the inside and not, brown or anything like that.
Yep.
A couple of those safety things. Chicken in the woods, if it's on a living tree, it's okay. But if it's dying of a dead tree, you want to probably stay away from it. I don't know if that's
dead
true or not.
Dead trees are still okay as long as it looks good. It's bright in color. The chicken of the woods is phenomenal too. Anyone can YouTube it to learn more what we're talking about. But it's this orange and yellow shelf-like mushroom that grows on oak trees and certain variety of hardwoods. And as long as it's fresh and you get it, you don't want it too dry. You can cook it and it takes on the flavor of chicken and it peels like chicken too. So that's the creme de la creme. That's the top dog, I feel.
Really?
That and probably the morels. Morels are another hot commodity. They're hard to find. Your chanterelles, chanterelles are okay, but Anything with that traditional stem and cap can be hard to identify, and you always want to make sure that you're safe, because it's a real deal. That's the crazy thing about mushrooms. Mushrooms can heal you, mushrooms can kill you, mushrooms can send you on a spiritual journey. Mushrooms can also heal nature and earth, and it's like they do all of these freaking things. That's so fast. And then the mycelial network too. This is the last I'll touch on the mycelium, the mushroom stuff. Other than the other questions, but the mycelium network itself, if you look at it from a map, as it grows out, it mimics the human brain with our neurons and the web formation that the neurons make. It mimics the universe.
That's what I was about to say. Which then, if we go at
we zoom out,
it mimics the exact cosmos.
The same cosmos.
The cosmos looks exactly the same as
the internet. Yeah. The internet is another node network, a neural network essentially, and there's just something fascinating about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. We've created that on a technological level, which is pretty insane, and yeah. But how often should people take mushrooms? The last thing that's the other thing is if we're looking at getting mushrooms and start taking them or trying them out and things like that, how often should we be incorporating them?
Yeah, so got to do the disclosure. Always talk to your healthcare professional, right? But I'll tell you what I do. I take lion's mane daily. So lion's mane for me is almost like that multivitamin for brain health. Super simple to get in. And these mushrooms have been consumed for hundreds and thousands of years, and the Asian region of the world and East Asia, and now we know about them here in the West, so the West is starting to consume them more. But in Europe, but lion's mane mushroom I do daily for brain health. It depends on what you want the mushroom to do, right? Because the mushrooms have different functions. So Another one that I'll take is cordyceps powder. I'll do my cordyceps before the gym or any type of workout or endurance activity, because it's going to help with oxygen absorption, and it's going to really help me get my cardiovascular health going, and I'm going to absorb more oxygen as I'm exercising and working out. It's very common with the cycling community and a lot of endurance athletes. I take reishi as well daily, and that one for me checks all the boxes. So I feel like I'm getting my immune health in, I'm getting my all the benefits, my DNA, my cardiovascular health, my heart health. I will recommend, if someone's curious to learn more about what mushrooms do what for the human body, you can go to fungiperfecti.com or hostdefense.com. That's not even my website. This is on Paul Stamets' website, because he just has a killer chart that
breaks everything down.
I'm going to bring into our site, right? But it breaks it down, and you can see all of what they do. So outside of that, though, if you're someone that is, again, if you're going through a period where you might be sick, or you might, again, going back to the cancer situations, or immune, if you have an immune system that's compromised, turkey tail is awesome to look into, because turkey tail really has those hardcore immuno boosters in them. So it really all depends on what you're using the mushroom for, and that's going to dictate how often you take them. If you took them every day in the normal serving size, it's totally fine. And most of the science says that in smaller quantities actually is more beneficial. It's kind of like on the whole microdosing level. The microdose is actually doing more for us in the body than a macrodose will. So sometimes more is not better, right?
Better is better.
Better is better.
Well, yeah, more is not better. Better is better.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. And obviously you sell them, and we're gonna tag all your stuff in there. But they could also, if they're looking at purchasing some mushrooms, they could just do a little simple plug right there. Rapscaps.
Rapscaps.com. We sell all of our mushrooms online. We dehydrate them, and we sell them with rehydration instructions. So even if you're in another state, you can order them online, and we'll ship them straight to your state. Gourmet mushrooms are tough because they only last for a certain amount of days, so we want to make sure that none go to waste, and we're a growing small business, so it's the best way to start. And then we've got mushroom hats, mushroom t-shirts, and the merch and everything, and at some point in the near future here, actually including a mushroom lotion, so for skincare. That's in one of my past lives, working on a CBD skincare line, so we're doing a lot of the skincare stuff now too with it. So you can find me on Rapscaps and all the social handles as well.
Yeah, I'm excited. You brought me a bag of lion's mane, which I was super psyched about, because I'll end up ordering some anyways. It looks awesome. I look forward to trying those things out. So after we get on to, we get on this journey of mushrooms, we find the benefit of them. how we transfer over to Wim Hof, and how do we go from there to flying across the pond to go and attend a seminar to become a certified Wim Hof instructor. So give me share your experience on that.
Yeah. So it's 2019, again, extending from that time period. And you know, I'm trying to introduce some of these wellness practices into my life. Meditation was one that I started with. And, you know, just trying to silence the mind, that monkey mind, the thinking mind. And later in that year, a good buddy of mine had, as we were on, you know, we took a nice hike and we set up some hammocks and we were just chilling out and stuff. And, you know, he asked me, he's like, hey, have you ever done breathing exercises before? And I was like, no, I've never done a breathing exercise before. He's like, you want to do one? I was like, yeah, I'll do one. And he said to me, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take 30 deep breaths, as deep as we can go. And then on the last one, you're going to exhale and hold your breath for as long as you can and see how you feel. And then once you feel like you have to take a breath, take a breath. And I was like, all right, that seems easy enough. And so, you know, I lay back in my hammock and I start going to town, just deep breathing. And I had never really done deep diaphragm breathing at that point. So I'm like doing whatever I can to fill the air in. And by like the 10th breath, the 12th breath, I started feeling a little tingly, a little lightheaded. And he mentioned that was going to be okay if I felt that. And I was in a safe spot laying down, right? And I was, okay, so now I'm feeling tingly. 20 breaths in, you know, the effects are, my body is vibrating. And then by the 30th breath, I exhale, and I'm holding my breath now. And I'm noticing 30 seconds goes by. A minute goes by. Not only am I holding my breath for a minute or longer, the energy that I'm feeling, the sensation, I felt alert, I felt alive. I sat up, I couldn't believe it. I looked at him in the hammock and I was like, this is crazy. Like, how does my body feel this way right now? I'd never, and then on top of that, how did I never know about this? And then, you know, I was able to hold my breath for 2 minutes and then I was just like amazed, dude. I was the way, and again, it's going back to the obsessive stuff. It was like, it felt really good. I knew it felt good at that moment. I went back home though and I started looking into the research and I learned that I had done the Wim Hof method, or at least the Wim Hof method breathwork. And I started learning about all of the benefits on the human body and that fact, that objective fact and what it does to the human body, which we'll get into, made me obsessed about it. And I started practicing it, you know, once or twice a week, a couple times a week to start. And I noticed that it was improving my mental health and everything. And I noticed I had more energy. So then I started becoming a daily practitioner. And about a year and a half into it, this fast forward to 2020, 2021, you know, I started realizing I had a breakthrough on, number one, what I wanted to do for work. Because at that time in 2008, 17, 18, 19, I was working on a few startup projects. I was learning about Bitcoin. I was trying to find myself again. And I had a breakthrough after a breathwork session on clarity on what I wanted to do in life. And that was literally, I told myself during this session that all I want to do is talk about Bitcoin, grow mushrooms, and teach people the Wim Hof method. And then after that, I got a job at Gemini, the Bitcoin job, and then I started the mushroom farm. And I was like, okay, I want to get my coaching certificate now, and I want to teach this breathwork, and I want to teach this practice. Because I think everyone needs to know about it. I think it's one of the most important health practices that you can know is breath work. Yeah. And so then I signed up online, took the courses, and went over to Spain, as Andrew said, in February of 2023 this year. It took me about a year and a half to get the certificate, and went over to Spain for the final testing for a week. Met 75 amazing people from 28 different countries or all around the world. And had a challenging week. It was like a mini boot camp almost, and came home and started practicing people. So that's kind of what led us together and what led me here now too.
I find, you know, I find breath work being something that's very hard to get people to do, to get people interested in. And, you know, I found breath work when I lived in South Korea in like 2006 and stuff like that. And just getting into the Eastern culture, seeing how they practice the things that they do, touching their martial arts, and, you know, going to Thailand and just spending a lot of time over there, and just fascinated. It's so different than our Western culture, and it intrigued me on, you know, why we have problems. Like, we have all the money in the world in the U.S., but we have all these problems, these healthcare problems, where you see these people that are in the rice paddies that are the healthiest people that you're like, what is going on? Like, why can't, you know, they have nothing, but they're the healthiest, and they're 70 into a full squat. Yeah. And that's what started, like, getting me down the rabbit hole of movement and all this other stuff. Yeah. And then when I stumbled on breath control, I was like, oh my gosh, this is life-changing. People are just shallow breathing through their mouth, talking so much that their carbon dioxide levels are through the roof, which makes them entirely exhausted, which makes them want to go to the couch and sleep because
mouth breathers,
which most people, I hate saying it, but most people are now,
including myself to start, and still during the day sometimes when I realize, shut your mouth.
It's just and people think that, like, oh, I don't have energy because of this and this and this. And a simple thing of just learning how to breathe properly could bring in that extra oxygen that's going to clear out your carbon dioxide, which are going to give you the energy and stuff like that. But it's so difficult to get people to actually do it or try it. And I've found, like, I can no longer push it on people. You just got to sprinkle the idea in and invite people to be like, hey, you want to just try this? Exactly the way that you got pulled into it. Is like the actual perfect way, because you'll find out if someone is curious to just try something. You know what I'm saying? Because if they're curious to do it, you know, and go through it, it's a good odds that they'll go down the rabbit hole and stick with it. If they're all immediately like, nope, I don't want to do it, you know, there's no purpose to push that. So how do you go about spreading the word of breath without being like the Church of Latter-day Saints that's knocking on your door and being like, hey, do you want breath work?
I try to, when I'm not evangelizing. No, it's number one, I think it is one of those things where feeling is believing. You know, like, people have to experience it in order to truly feel the effects on your body. And then you start, and then that's the hook, is like, okay, there's something here. And then explaining and educating them on the real scientific benefits of what proper breathing does for you. And then also looking at their lifestyle, and then, you know, determining, okay, like, if you have low energy, if you have inflammation, if you have these issues, something as simple as breathing can help alleviate a lot of the symptoms from it, because a lot of the disease comes from improper breathing. You know, so I start with, like, the facts that I learned that are absolutely astonishing, and why I got hooked on it. So like you're saying, is like, we became mouth breathers, right? So, you know, nose breathing was always common over the last 100 years or so. We've learned from that book, Breath, which is a great book.
Oh my gosh. You know? Nelson, was it John?
Put the plug.
Was it John Nelson?
Something like this.
Who's the author of that book?
I don't remember.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, phenomenal book though. And he talks about how, you know, we, over the last 100 plus years, we became mouth breathers. The problem with mouth breathing is that not only do you shallow breathe, but you're getting less oxygen into your body when you breathe through the nose, right? The nose goes through all these different tubes down the throat, and you produce nitrous oxide, NO, right? That goes down and it sinks to the lower part of the lungs. So you actually absorb more oxygen through nose breathing. On top of that, mouth breathing causes shallow breathing, right? When you're shallow breathing, like to your point, and we'll talk about how the carbon dioxide, the CO2 plays a role in your breath, your CO2 levels are higher. So CO2 is directly related to acidity, the acidity of your blood. So if you are mouth breathing and you're shallow mouth breathing too, you're not taking full breaths, you have a higher count of CO2 in the blood, which means your acidity in your blood is also high. So we're causing this unnecessary acidity, which causes inflammation. Acidity is related to inflammation. And we also have stress, right? Oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is one of the most common forms of stress that people deal with, and it's just simply from not having enough oxygen in your body because you're mouth breathing. So you have all this inflammation that comes from the mouth breathing. But what fascinating me is learning that CO2 is related to acidity, because the amount of CO2 in your blood is directly related to how acidic your blood. If you're, excuse me, if you're doing proper breathing or you're doing deep breathing techniques, what you're doing with the Wim Hof method breath work is that you're lowering the amount of CO2 in your blood through your exhales. And when you do 15 to 30 breaths this way, your CO2 levels are actually lower in your blood. When your CO2 levels drop and they're lower in your blood turns more alkaline. So the acidity lowers, pH scale. The acidity goes away because there's less CO2 in the blood, and your blood is more alkaline because there's already 100% oxygen saturation, so it's flooded with oxygen. And when you do this, you quite literally remove the inflammation out of the body because the blood is no longer acidic. So you literally can change the biochemistry of your body to lower your inflammation, to increase your white and red blood cell counts, because when you're doing these breath holds with the Wim Hof method specifically, or any kind of breath holds with deep breathing, you're putting your body into this acute hypoxic state. It's just your body thinks it's hypoxic, like you're on Mount Everest, but it's not. And your blood cells are oversaturated with oxygen, so that's totally normal. And your body's producing more red blood cells now. So we can literally change the function of the human body just by breathing. Another crazy fact is that, it was thought that humans couldn't activate their autonomic nervous system, right? The nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is your nervous system that's responsible for all of your involuntary actions of the human body. So your breathing,
pumping your heart,
yep. Your hormonal system, right? These are blinking. Yeah. These are all actions that the human body does through the subconscious mind, right? You're not consciously doing it. However, you can consciously breathe. You can take deep breaths, and based on how you breathe will activate a certain part of your autonomic nervous system. So your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight system that also deals with adrenaline release and the hormonal system. If you do fast breathing, you activate the sympathetic nervous system. Your eyes dilate, your adrenaline goes up. It's the fight or flight kind of system. If you do slow, deep breathing, that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest. You're turning on your immune system. You're getting all these beneficial healing parts to your body. So based on how you breathe, you're able to activate your autonomic nervous system like a remote controller for whatever you need to do. So if you're looking to remove your inflammation in your blood, remove the inflammation in the body, the deep breathing helps with that. If you're looking to increase your energy, this is another one that was fascinating, is that oxygen, the amount of oxygen that you bring into your body is related to the amount of ATP that's produced within the cells. For those that don't know, ATP is adenosine triphosphate. It is the molecule that's responsible for all of the energy. So all your movements, the only reason why humans are alive and can walk around is because of ATP production within the cells. When you breathe in oxygen and you're doing deep breathing, you're feeding in a faster and more of a supply of oxygen into the mitochondria of the cell. And the mitochondria takes oxygen and glucose and metabolizes that into ATP. So if you're feeling sluggish in the afternoon from work, or if you're feeling sluggish at any time, or if you need to get ready to go fight that lion or take on that workout or something, you can do fast breathing in a safe location, of course, and that will produce more ATP, quite literally producing more energy in your body. So when I was laying back and I was feeling that tingling sensation and that energy, it was quite literally more energy that was being produced in the body. And, it's just fascinating,
it's
so
like,
many things.
It's like the same thing, and ATP works the same way in the muscles. So the heavy breathing that you're doing is equivalent for you jumping on the ground and knocking out like 30 push-ups.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a higher level of energy. You're getting the blood flow running through your body. You're gonna be burning up some of that ATP as well, the lactic acid that's coming into the muscles to help repair. You're gonna get that flush. It's literally doing lung push-ups pretty much, in a simple term. If you're looking at the correlation between the muscle and the lung capacity on that aspect of it, and it's pretty crazy. It's
in life longevity. So there's been studies that have been done that the your lung capacity is correlated with how long you live, which makes sense. The oxygen's the life force. It's the first thing that we do when we're born. It's the last thing that we do when we die. Right? We can't live more than a few minutes with it, but we can live without water for a certain amount of days. We can live without food a certain amount of other days. So it's fascinating to me that it's this simple thing that we can actually utilize to change the function of the human body, change the function of the human mind, and to also become more resilient to stress. because that's ultimately what the Wim Hof method does, is it helps you become more resilient to stress of any kind. And stress is all different things. There's emotional stress, there's physical stress, right? The emotional stress is like anything. Is it anxiety? Is it depression? Is it PTSD? Is it a mental issue? Of physical stress, so exercise, an injury, you
have eustress, positive stress, the ones where you're
stress.
like, oh my gosh, I won the lottery, like the worry, like the
the ice baths or the sauna, that's physical stress, right? And this is where even the breath work can come in to help numb pain receptors and help get you through the ice baths. We focus on slow, deep breathing through the ice baths, because the ice is activating, the cold water is activating your sympathetic nervous system. But if you can get into that deep breathwork state while you're in the ice bath and you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, you balance the body to a point where now you're in this ice bath for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, these incredible feats. The same thing with the heat, with the sauna. So the breath work, is important because number one, it kills inflammation, and inflammation is the number one cause of disease and the root cause of all death. Number two, it helps rebalance the hormonal system and it activates the immune system. And then number three is it's going to help you overcome stress of any kind, whether it's environmental stress, emotional stress, good stress at work, physical stress. So if you can build up that reserve capacity that humans once had, by the way, before we put on these clothes and we got in these nice air-conditioned buildings,
back at the Primal Path.
we didn't have to worry about this because we were always introduced to the elements. Our body was always going through these hormetic interventions of cold and heat and hunger, right? And the body functioned properly. But when we got into this, traditional state of living, we put clothes on, we put shoes on. The body is out of balance. It's out of balance. It's out of balance from a stress state. It's out of balance from an inflammatory state because of that. And the breath work and the exposures to like the heat and the cold are going to help to reset the hormonal system, reset the immune system, bring the body back into a homeostasis state. And that helps make us, I like to say, like happier, healthier, and stronger. And it's true.
Yeah, I think it's so important that all the tools we need to get healthier and get better, we don't actually need to go anywhere for them, for most part. I would say probably 70% of the population. Well, and that's probably even being light.
Yeah.
That instead of running directly to the doctor and going off of a doctor's, it's not that I don't believe in doctors. I just want to say that as well too. Yeah, that's important.
Right.
But I'm just saying, sometimes have a tendency to go there as the first thing, and because that's the way that our society has raised us. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that we can do in our off time while we're waiting for that doctor's appointment, or in between things that we're doing, that can drastically improve our overall sleep, health, our cardiovascular disease, our obesity that we're fighting, like everything like that. And it's all right at our hands. Sunlight, sleep, which is the biggest thing that if we want to talk about breath, I would say sleep as well too.
Huge.
Breath and sleep,
Huge.
Those two things tied together. So many people have sleep apnea.
Yep.
So many people snore, which is all mouth breathing. So they're not even recovering when they are sleeping. So put the CPAP on, get that oxygen in there. There's a reason for that, why it really helps people recover more than way just giving you sleep. It's giving you that fresh oxygen to lower your acidity levels. Learning how to breathe properly, getting some sort of movement in every single day. And in general, just making better decisions and having some discipline in the food that we're putting in our mouth and in the balance of that. And it's not even, once again, like we always talk about, there's no bad foods, there's no bad movements, there's just overconsumption or, that's it.
In the breath work, I think it's good also for some people to, like for us to just talk, like some of those conditions, that's a good example, is like, like who is someone that would want to maybe approach breath work that hasn't done it before? Like what's that motivator? Well, we know from the science now that like if you're dealing with an anti-inflammatory condition, which is all of us are dealing with daily inflammation, at a minimum, right? Like inflammation, autoimmune disorders, a lot of autoimmune disorders are inflammatory disorders, and the immune system's out of balance, right? So the immune system is attacking its own cells. The white cells are attacking itself. That's what an autoimmune disorder is. We know now that rheumatoid arthritis, the Wim Hof method, is a scientifically proven treatment plan for rheumatoid arthritis. And like Andrew was saying, like, we're not saying doctors are bad. I think there's universal, you should, the allopathic care and then your naturopath care can be done at once on both sides. So autoimmune disorders, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease is another one that we've seen a lot of success with. If you're someone that is dealing with neuropathy, so if you have cold hands or cold feet, peripheral neuropathy specifically, like the ice baths in the water is awesome, because what the cold water does is it trains the cardiovascular system. And that's why we do it in the Wim Hof method, is because if we're doing deep breathing and we're trying to have the body absorb as much oxygen as possible, that is being delivered through the cardiovascular system and the cells and the veins and the vessels. The cold, when you get into cold water, your veins will all constrict, vasoconstriction, right?
Yep.
And that's due to the flood of noradrenaline when you first get in, and that's the body's survival mechanism for keeping the core heat. You shut down all the blood flow to the extremities. But when you get out of the water, and if you do like the hot, right, your veins will dilate wider than they were actually before, and you have all this flow of blood circulation that's happening. So we know with peripheral neuropathy, the cold is actually a really good treatment plan for it. As long as you don't have bad circulatory issues and stuff, all of the,
Yeah, you tie in type 2 diabetes with peripheral neuropathy, and then you got to start. Then you're going to need some doctors and stuff like that. There are there are some things that there are a lot of things going on. I would just make sure that you're not jumping in freezing cold water. I would stick with that 60 degrees. Yes. Stick with that 60-degree water, a little bit colder than that, and you can get the same effects as well with that cold water therapy. And I know we didn't really tie into it of cold water and hot, but I know you just got out of our sauna, and I'm looking forward to the winter because we could jump in the sauna and then immediately go outside in the snow,
I love it.
And then just do the hot and cold this way instead of as much as I love the cold plunge, this is like a different just a different way to do it. But there's a lot of benefits to that hot and cold along with that breath control.
Yep.
And every one of these things is integrated. Everyone will improve if we do that other thing. If you breathe good, you get the sunlight, and you move and you eat healthy, your health will skyrocket. Your blood panel will look phenomenal.
Yep. And it'll suck. Like, that's the other thing too, when people start these practices, is like, for the breath work, you have to sit there and breathe as many times as it takes to get you there. For some people it's 15 breaths, for some people it's 30 breaths, for some people it's 45. But just like an exercise in the gym, like, hey, nothing's for free. Like, these are exercises, so you need to take the time and the commitment to do the full breathing. You need to take the time and commitment into doing the cold exposure or the heat and stuff. And to your point, like, you don't even need to get in an ice bath. You can do a cold shower, and I teach people where, turn that nozzle to where it's uncomfortable. You don't even have to go full-fledged all the way. Where it's uncomfortable, and you can circulate in the water that way and go limb by limb and introduce the body into the cold, because short-term stressor here. We're trying to introduce it into the cold, take it back out. And if you do that alone, like you're saying, the science says 65 degrees and under, I think, you get the health benefits out of it. So you don't even have to do the ice bath. But these are practices that you have to do. But the benefits of doing them and getting over that is you're going to be more healthy. You're gonna be less inflamed. You're gonna feel amazing because you have a flood of feel-good hormones like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, adrenaline. You feel amazing. You're gonna be more healthy because you're gonna be less inflamed, and you're gonna be more mentally resilient because there's something about, and you and I have seen this from the military, and I know a lot of vets have this in common, is that when you overcome doing that, right? Like, you've overcome the cold, you've overcome the heat, the cold shower, the breath work, you've put the time in, it makes you more resilient and builds up your mental resilience for anything that you're going to deal with in the future. So you become stronger mentally too.
There's the funny thing that you talk about, so like that whole point right there, I always look at it is, once you go to war and you come back, no matter what the situation is back here, like, I don't get riled up about it, because I was like, it could always be worse. It could be much worse. You know what I'm saying?
So much worse.
And the resilience, people are like, oh, how are you resilient like that? It's just like, if you put yourself in enough uncomfortable situations, and Wim Hof really teaches this as well too, that you're learning how to control in the very uncomfortable conditions. And the simple thing is, the second that you learn how to control your breath, the second you're able to control all your stress in your life, is the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what happens. When we hit stress, we go into that fight or flight. Our heart rate skyrockets.
Yeah.
And guess what controls our heart rate? Our breath.
Breathing.
If we can slow down our breath, we can slow down our heart rate. It's the same thing when you're doing a long race, an endurance race, or going for
workouts in here. Yep. Sure. I was doing it today.
Yeah, like when you can get very uncomfortable and you feel like you need to stop. I need to take a rest. But if you know how to breathe, you never actually have to take a rest.
Yes.
You slow your body down. Yep. You can slow your heart rate down, taking those bigger, deeper breaths, and then slowly start increasing at that faster pace to find your momentum again. And when you learn that, it not only carries over to the gym and all the other things in life, but then it's getting into traffic jams or getting into a car accident. You see the people that have the full-blown road rage, which I'm highly guilty of.
Yep.
Sure. But
even things at home, right?
But yeah, things at home that used to be a big deal that people are flipping, yelling, and screaming at. Yeah. Or, someone's going slow in the fast lane and you're blowing up at them. Like, those things, just you realize that they don't matter and there's no reason to actually create that stress in your body. And that's why I think movement is like the key to life, in the sense of the basics of movement can teach you about your breath control, hot and cold, being uncomfortable, and things like that. And it's with movement for people who do have self-esteem issues and depression and anxiety and many things that, they feel worthless and they feel shitty. Getting movement in introduces you that you can go through something that's challenging. And even if that's 5 reps of a press or with a dumbbell or whatever that level is, that's, to that person, which is difficult, that opens up their possibilities. So I can do more.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden they go, hey, if you breathe a little bit better, if you work your breath or you work your movement to your breath, you can get more reps. You can go a little bit longer. You can do this thing. And then they start learning about breath control. And now when they're outside of that gym or they're outside in that territory, they have that stress that comes onto them. They're already educated enough to be like, you know what? This is not something that I need to be riled up about. Or, hey, I don't need my stress to be here. And they learn how to take it out rather than turning into a big event or something a lot more serious than it ever needs to be.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the biggest thing, especially that we see, is that anxiety disorders and self-esteem issues, depression right now is like, it's right there. And all those things, whatever way you go about it, whether you start off with nutrition and find movement and then find breath and then find like sunlight and hot and cold, or maybe you start off in the gym and then you find the breath. It doesn't matter what way you start, which direction you start, or anything like that. It all starts with your ability to just take a chance and try out something that might be slightly uncomfortable and new, and pick whatever is the least scary to do,
It's funny how this works, where humans come back to humans, and it's like movement, mobility, circulation, breathing, all these things that we need. And it's fascinating. One of the, you brought up a good point that I want to build on too, is how the breath is the energy force, it's the life force, and how as long as you don't stop breathing, you keep moving. And I've noticed this even within physical endurance stuff, is that, as long as you're properly breathing, deep breathing, and you're getting oxygen in the body, you're going to keep going. Wim Hof has shown this with all of the crazy world records that he's done, and that he's brought people on as well. So it's not just him climbing up to the death zone in Mount Everest with just shorts on.
Just shorts on, yeah.
And a boot. Doing a full marathon without water in the desert. Doing a full marathon up in the Arctic Circle with no shoes on. Bringing a group of 12 to 15 people up Mount Kilimanjaro in 2 days, where it normally takes 5 days because of acute mountain sickness and acclimation. And the people that were on that hike with him in Kilimanjaro that were just normal people, because they made sure with the study that they had to bring normal people that don't do this at all, including older folks. Like there was a couple older folks in their, I think, early 70s that were there, like 60s and 70s. Not that that's old, but they were able to do it because they were intentionally taking deeper breaths than they needed on every step and just focusing on that conscious, deep breathing. And because of that deep breathing, the body doesn't stop. So the runner, the body keeps going. So, the marathon runner keeps running the marathon, no matter if it's mile 20, 25, 30, right? Them climbing up Mount Kilimanjaro, they were able to keep that blood oxygen saturation higher. And when they started to feel like a headache come on, they would stop and they would do 30 deep, fast breaths, power breathing, to reoxygenate the body, bring that CO2 count back down, and then keep going, deep breathing. So,
that's crazy, man. I
like
can't.
he's saying,
Oh,
this is superhuman shit.
But that people,
But it's with us.
people who,
It's with everyone. Everyone can do it.
people who haven't done like the Wim Hof method or tried taking very 30 deep breaths don't understand that how physically exhausting it is to take 30 deep breaths. But hiking Mount Kilimanjaro on top of that and then pausing to do that just blows my mind too, because that had to be, I mean, that's tough. That's there's no doubt about it in any way.
Yeah. So it's fascinating, and that's now what has led me into the coaching, because I think it's something that whether it's the Wim Hof method or it's any breath work, it's just getting that point across. Like, this is so important to the human health, your mental health, your spiritual health, everything. It's all connected. And a lot of what humans are dealing with, they don't need to deal with it, because it's mostly from not breathing properly, right? Not taking deep breaths. And that can be taught, and the power's with everyone. So now, that's kind of what I'm doing as well on the side, is that I'm teaching the Wim Hof method, and we host workshops, and also we're going to be integrating some online breathwork classes, because I think it's just important that people have accessibility to the information and the knowledge. So whether you see me hosting a workshop, or you see the online breathwork classes, or if you want to go onto YouTube and just Google YouTube guided Wim Hof method breathing, there's a great YouTube video where it's by Wim himself, and it's visual, so you can do 3 or 4 rounds of breathwork on that app, and I would just give it a try. And then once you try the breathwork for the first time, you try to do it to the full force, I think you'll be hooked. You're gonna feel amazing, and they'll be able to find resources through me or Wim Hof website, or the YouTube videos are all free as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna put it out to our clients and see if we can get a course. Don't worry, this desk is almost broken on the last podcast.
Would be a so-me.
It's only a couple.
Take out the set in the middle of the
couple
recording.
podcasts. I'm waiting for it. It's gonna happen. We just had this conversation on the last one too. He was blown away at how shaky this desk is. But yeah, we're gonna put that out, because I would love to have you come and do a breath course here.
I would love that,
and do that. I think that would be awesome. I think we should do that. We should do it a day, especially we can do it in the fall too, but I'd love to do it also in the winter.
Yeah.
Then we can go from sauna, we can step outside,
Love it.
we can do breath work, and we can kind of do that whole trifecta. That's just going to hammer.
I got a nice inflatable tub, so if we want to plunge out, or we do the snow, that's awesome. And when I was in the sauna too, that was the first time I had been in a sauna, and I don't know, probably a dry sauna for maybe 7 years or something. It had been a while. And it's and I wanted to again practice the breath work in that heat, in that stressor, and see how that made me feel. And I was amazed, dude. I was sitting in there, and I focused on just nasal breathing, and I did 30 deep breaths, and I kind of get charged up a little bit. You feel that sensation of energy, right? It felt great. And I noticed that like the heat, it wasn't like as hot on me at all. Like the heat went down in temperature on my skin. I was also doing some visualization of like pretending I was in my ice bath or something, and I cooled off. And then when I came out of it, I was like, oh, I'm warm again. So it's amazing. Either the heat, the cold, the stress.
It's just that big temperature change. The thermogenesis of the body is the most stressful thing on the body. There's nothing more stressful than getting your body to go from hot to cold and cold to hot.
Yeah.
So that's why we also train that on that aspect. The most important thing is getting oxygen into our body. Most important thing for our body is to move our body. But we got to add as many stressors that we can to the body in all different facets. And that's what the hot and cold does. Yeah. It just adds another layer to provide longevity and vitality to your body. And there's not a sooner time to do it. It's I look at the investment of these natural remedies or natural health or holistic health or whatever you want to call it. I look at them exactly the same way as a retirement. Because whether savings, the earlier you start your savings, the earlier you set yourself up for retirement, the longer and more the more it's going to pay off. And thank you for finishing my sentences. Yeah. It's late, but and the same thing with the body. The more that we can put those stressors on our body, the more we can get into it, the longer we're going to be able to do the things that we want to do.
Yeah.
And the longer we're going to move freely and live fully. That's the big thing that we want to do. But at the same time, it's never too late to start your retirement.
Right.
And it's never too late to start getting into movement, learning how to breathe, hot and cold, get some mushrooms into your system, help with the brain health, your myelin sheath, make sure that your neurons are all firing. We're keeping that neural connections up there. Last thing we'll do before we wrap this up, and we can also throw in tactical pause if you want, or we can get on another podcast about that. But
that's the social handles. We can just quickly. That's if you want to follow me on Instagram or social, Tactical Pause is the handle. tacticalpause_org. And then you can go to tacticalpause.org, and that's where we host like the Wim Hof information and websites and stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll tag that stuff in there as well too. But what's something that's some actual advice to help people incorporate more of a holistic practices in their daily life to overall improve their well-being? Like one tip for them.
Yeah, I'd say identify your goals. So what's going on with your day-to-day that you want to change, right? Your body, your mind, identifying what it is you want. So whether it's you're trying to have less anxiety, or you're trying to have less inflammation, or you're trying to gain, get in better shape. So identify what you want. Number 2, find what you like to do. So actually start trying some things, right? So if the breath works for you, stick to it. If the cold or the sauna, stick to it. If the exercise is your goal, find out what type of exercise you like to do and stick with it. And then I'd say that the final third thing is try to form the habit out of it, right? So the power of habit. So I think it's like 2 weeks to create a new habit. They suck when you're doing them, but try to stick to that for 2 weeks to create a habit, because then it becomes a self-fulfilling thing where you're more likely to do it. And if you enjoy what you're doing too, you're going to do it. I try to focus on like a daily routine myself. I wake up, I have some matcha. I try to do my breath work in the morning before meals, because it's good to do breath work on an empty stomach. We should, that's a little plug on that too. You want your blood to be neutral. You don't want it to be spiked from eating or drinking. Yeah. And then I take my cold shower. I start my work day. I finish my work day with some more breath work, and then I'll do my ice bath on exercise days, gym days. I'll do some stretching, and then that's it for my evening. And I try to stick to that. And I notice when I don't stick to it, there's something off that day. Like today, for example, I didn't stick to it this morning, and I told Andrew at the gym, I was like, yeah, it's been one of those days, man. It's like dark in the morning. I wasn't feeling it at work at all today, the whole day. And because I got off that track this morning, but now I'm more motivated to do it tomorrow because I know it makes me feel good. So, yeah.
Yeah, throw a little wrench in your system. Yeah. Come to an evening class, then hit the sauna.
I usually work out in the morning.
Then hit a podcast.
I feel great, though. I'm going to go home. I'm going to sleep.
You probably sleep really good because that sauna is the big thing.
Yeah.
Man, Joe, it's been a pleasure to have you on here. We're going to bring you back on here. We're going to talk a little bit more about, there's just so much more that we could dive into. Yeah. I'd love to have that hot and cold conversation. And I'd also love to tackle mushrooms and the different aspect, the other side of mushrooms that we didn't touch base on, besides the gourmet mushrooms. I'd love to dive into that stuff if you're open. And just thanks for coming on. Thank you very much for the mushrooms. Yeah. Rapscaps.com if you're looking for his mushrooms. Yep. Tacticalpause.org.
Correct. Is
the two places. We'll have that all linked into our descriptions.
Yeah. Well,
thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for having me on, Andrew. I really appreciate it, and looking forward to next time.
We'll talk to you guys soon.